Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here, and welcome back to my series, The Crow in the Shadow of Eric Draven. Now, this is going to be part B of a two-part video called Reboot the Remake, in which I'm going to be discussing what I would do with a potential reboot of the Crow franchise. Now, keep in mind as we go into this, a lot of this isn't going to be so much focused on story or plot or anything to that effect, but more in terms of the pieces that you need from a filmmaking perspective to relaunch the franchise in a way that's going to allow it to move forward and do cool, new, interesting things, as well as make the money necessary to continue the franchise and to keep the fan base, the former fan base, happy, as well as bring in a new fan base, which is really what a reboot should do. So, you want to remake The Crow. First off, take that idea you have about remaking the Eric Draven story. As much as I love Eric Draven, just throw that shit right out the window. It's not going to work. There are too many inherent problems. What we want here is a fresh new take that shows the endless possibilities of the franchise, as well as the endless possibilities for the franchise to grow and make money. Because keep in mind, while I love the art, I love the storytelling, one of the most important things with any franchise is that it's able to make enough money to keep itself going. So what you're going to need is a complete and total overhaul from top to bottom, but let's start off with casting. So, seeing as we're not going to be doing the Eric Draven story, we've already decided that, why don't we give the audience something completely different than anything they've ever seen in terms of the Crow movies, which is a female avatar of the Crow. Now, this is something that has been done in the comic books and in the novelization, and even in the crappy Crow Stairway to Heaven television series to a larger or lesser extent. But it's never been done in the actual films. And I think that this would be really interesting because it would give us something new and different, immediately kind of differentiating this film from all the ones that have come before, stating that they're doing something different, while at the same time it would play into all the kind of current prevailing trends in Hollywood of kind of the female-led action movie. Even though a lot of this movie I would think should be kind of geared towards dramatic acting, with good action sprinkled in, but still the perception of the movie and of the franchise is going to be more action-driven, so if you take that road, I think it's a really interesting way that will pay off financially and in terms of the press the movie will get, and in terms of like the public recognition the movie will get, and in terms of bringing in a new audience. So having that decided, picking your star is a very important part, because the star that you choose will say a lot about the movie that you're making, as well as go a long way in terms of getting the film greenlit, and in terms of what the public's first initial reaction to the project that you're proposing is going to be. So what do you need? You need a bankable star with name brand recognition who can also bring like an air of legitimacy to the type of film that we're doing. Because keep in mind that The Crow is viewed as kind of a genre film. So you need an actress who is respected, who makes money, who has name brand recognition, but also people will buy her and not think that she's just kind of selling out to do a comic book movie. So having said all those things, for like the last 10 years there's only been, because this is the story I've been wanting to do for the last 10 years of the female Crow, and there's always only been one actress in my mind who really fit that role, and that's Milla Jovovich. Now, I know a lot of people aren't really that fond of her anymore after the Resident Evil franchise, which I'm not a big fan of those movies, but nevertheless, she has the name recognition, she has the power of having been in a franchise that made a lot of money, which matters to the studios, even if we didn't particularly care for those movies. She knows intricately all the kind of work that she would have to do for the stunts and for the action sequences. She is a legitimately good actress. People forget this because she's done so many kind of like big popcorn blow-em-up action movies, but she's a legitimately good actress who just doesn't get that much opportunity to do strong dramatic things, which a Crow movie is a perfect blend of kind of those things. And beyond that, I also think she would look absolutely stunning in the makeup. As you can see, I've put together a few quick altered photos to demonstrate this, although I apologize for the quality. Whenever I was making these, I didn't have a current or like running version of Photoshop, so they're very haphazardly put together. But yeah, I think she is absolutely perfect for this, and as I said, there's no one else I could have thought of for the last 10 years who would have done a better job. However, I do have to say there are many actresses working in Hollywood who would be fantastic in this role, and my personal second choice for it would be Marie Avramopulos. Sorry guys, I know I just butchered that. It's the young lady who plays Octavia on the TV show 100. She's a great actress, she is kick-ass, and she's had plenty of stunt work and action scenes and all that kind of stuff, and as you can see from these images, she looks really awesome in battle makeup. So, Having the casting put aside now, we need to decide something that is actually more important, and that is a director. Now, while the public perception doesn't rely as much on the director, obviously the quality of the actual film will, and the director is equally important in getting the film greenlit, as well as kind of the industry perception of the film that's being made. So for this one, I would be choosing Kathryn Bigelow. Now, Kathryn Bigelow has had a lot of legitimate cred in terms of like having won an Academy Award, but she also has lots of indie and genre cred with films to her credits like Near Dark, Point Break, and the absolutely fantastic Strange Days. Beyond that, she has an extremely adaptable and eclectic style, leaving me with no doubt that she would be able to craft something interesting and different from everything else that's come previously in the franchise. And guys, that is something that you definitely need when you're going to be rebooting something that's as well known as The Crow, especially something where the following films in the franchise experienced an extreme diminish of quality as the series went on. Now again, please keep in mind, guys, this is not my pitch for my ultimate Crow movie or my ultimate Crow story. I'm actually a little bit looser on what the plot should be. Right now, I'm mostly laying out details for things that I think could make the franchise successful. Because keep in mind that, like, with my choices, a lot of the thought behind them is that the budget for this first one is going to have to be slightly higher than you would necessarily think a Crow movie should be, because you have to do two things with your budget. You have to make sure that if the movie makes enough to do a sequel, but not enough to get an upped budget, that the next movie still has enough budget to do something worthwhile. While at the same time, you want to have a budget that's big enough that if the movie's successful enough that they up your budget, that you can do something truly different and special with the amount of money you're going to be getting for the next one. So again, starting off with a high budget, you're going to need a good actor, you're going to need a good director, and those things are absolutely paramount whenever trying to get the financial gains that you need to relaunch a franchise like this. So the next thing, and this has something to do with story and style and look, but it also has to do with your budget and differentiating this film from others. The majority of the Crow films that we've seen have been centralized in America because the first film takes place in Detroit. It's kind of an American-born idea, but the potential of taking the Avatar of the Crow outside of the United States is really interesting. It gives us different visuals. It's been done in the books and comics quite a bit. So just imagine if you take the Crow to kind of Eastern Europe, where you can play with like the gothic kind of roots of the character and style of the original book, but while doing something different. You could also go to Tokyo and kind of play with the kind of techno-noir elements that they have going on in the bigger areas of Tokyo. Also, changing up like where the location of the film is gives you a vastly different kind of cast of characters for your villains. So for example, if you're in Tokyo, you could potentially do something with the Yakuza, or if you're in Eastern Europe, it gives you all these different possibilities. You see what I'm saying? Like, you don't just have to have them going up against dirty cops, or have her going up against normal like gang members. You can do something different and special, so it's not just kind of a bunch of guys in plain clothes with funny names running around, because, you know, like, that's kind of what a lot of these villains amount to, especially in the sequels. So I think that that's something that could definitely help by changing the location or the setting of the film. And even beyond that, like, if you go outside the US, you can definitely find pockets of different countries to shoot in where you could get significant tax breaks, which would also help with the financial end, which would go into all the other things that I previously said about that in terms of budget and how important that is to rebooting the franchise. And as I said, guys, in terms of the actual story or like attaching a writer, I haven't actually put that much thought into it because this particular video is more geared towards kind of just the production side as opposed to the creative or story side. But I did have a few thoughts on it. Like, in general, it's hard to choose a writer for this kind of project. It'd be better just to kind of like put out the feelers and give the restrictions and see what people come at you in terms of like what their take on it would be. There's, like I said, there's plenty of books or comic books that you can draw from. The Crow Flesh and Blood is an absolutely great book that you could draw on for this. Use a lot of elements from there. I've used a lot of photos from that book in this video here. But I do have some things that I wanted to address that you could do or maybe change that would kind of, again, set this apart. Number one, just because you have a woman lead does not mean that you have to have the rape or sexual assault angle be the impetus for the revenge. There are a lot of different kinds of victims, and there's a lot of different things you could do. Like, her being murdered with someone she cares about or loves is enough. You don't actually have to use the sexual assault angle, because I know that, like, that's something that people are going to, like, question just by the fact of her being the female character and then wondering if that's exploitative or whatnot. So you don't really have to address that. You don't have to use that. There's a lot of different things you could do. too. One of the other things I would actually suggest, because again, we've never seen this in a movie, is it would be interesting if the thing that resulted in her death and her loved one's death, or in this case, actually, what I would say is it'd be interesting to see if, like, maybe she was killed and the person she was with, whether it be her child or her husband or her father or mother or someone like that, maybe they weren't actually killed. Maybe they were, like, paralyzed or put into a vegetative state. That way they're kind of still clinging to the physical world, and you have a little bit more conflict in terms of, like, this character wanting to reinsert themselves into their former life but not being able to. And you could also kind of then play with the idea of the character being able to promise that living person vengeance whether they comprehend it or not. I think you could mine a lot of dramatic and emotional, like, great scenes and just drama out of that kind of thing. The other thing, and this one is an ideally speaking situation, but it's the hardest one to get around, because it's a big departure from the source material in The Crow, but something that the movies really hinge themselves on, is the idea that the bird is the link to the power of the crow, so that, like, if the crow dies or if the crow gets injured, the avatar of the crow becomes mortal. Now, I understand why this is added. It's because without that, without having a way to hurt your hero, it really makes it hard to up the stakes in the third act. But if you could find a way around it, I think it could be really interesting and would leave you with a lot of other possibilities in terms of how to make this invulnerable character vulnerable, especially if you use the idea of one of the loved ones still being alive. That kind of gives you an in, but then you're still going to be playing on kind of comic book action movie tropes of, like, kidnapping or something like that. So it's a very complicated mess to untangle, but I feel that, like, if you could find a way to get rid of that and insert maybe not something else new, but just find a character-driven or plot-driven way around that aspect, that you could, again, differentiate yourself from the things that came before and stick a little closer to the source material, hopefully appeasing an even larger subsection of the graphic novel fan base. Right on, guys, so that's what I would do if I were rebooting the Crow franchise. As I said, it's not my ideal or my perfect Crow story. If you'd like to hear some of my pitches for Crow stories, let me know down in the comments below, and I might start doing a couple of videos on that, because believe me, I definitely have a few, as any fan as big of, you know, a fan for any franchise as I am for The Crow has. I've got them, so just let me know down below. Also, if you're wanting to know, like, what my thoughts are on the reboot of The Crow doing the Eric Draven story, then make sure and check out the last video in the series, where I focus in on that. Right on, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and share it with some friends. That's more important now than ever, with everything YouTube's been changing up on small YouTubers like myself. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit that little bell so you can get updates on all the dope content I'll have coming out in the future. Furthermore, guys, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I will have the link for that in the description below. Again, thank you very much for watching, children of the screen. I hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.